So I've made a new material, and then I'm going to come over to base color map, drag out, go to general, and say bitmap. Open, and now I have this texture map inside of here. Open, and now I have this texture map inside of here. And it's not attached because that other texture that I just got rid of is attached to it. So once I have it, you need to make sure it's doubled. You know, your dots are around this, and this will show up. If I have this selected, it'll show up too, but that's a different, if I ever put more than one material type on there. Also, I can be like having this selected and have, or different ones selected. You just need to make sure the double dot, or the dotted line, the marching ants line is there. What you do, you just do assign material to selection, the little arrow picture sphere to the selection, bam. And you say replace it, because I just overwrote the old one, and bam. And without even change, then I close this. And without even changing anything, those cuts already work perfectly, again, because I cut them, I built it correctly inside of Photoshop. So that's the big to-do. Now, when we start building this, what we want to think about is how much do we want ZBrush to fight with us on? And how much do we not? Now, remember I told you last week, or we talked a little bit about, when you're working in ZBrush, you make everything. Well, that's what we're looking at here. Instead of trying to make a brush, make this and just break these all off into their own pieces and leaving it at that, I'm actually going to cut up every brick and make them their own element of the same object. Because it's much easier to sculpt on the edges of a brick that's next to another brick and make it look like it's a brick sitting on a brick than it is to try and carve in and get everything straight. This way you're focused on the elements of what you're building. That's what ZBrush and other things are doing now that we're getting further and further along. So if I look at this, I'm going to look at this piece right here. I'll go to poly mode. Okay, set up to red. If you ever want to get that red off, by the way, it's F2 is the shortcut to get that off. I'll turn that off for now. So I want these all into separate elements, meaning that I don't want to, I've seen people totally break them apart into 100 pieces. I don't like doing it that way. I was thinking about that today. I mean, there's been bonuses and everything. I just like to keep it all as one object, and I'll show you why for when we get to ZBrush, I think, and then I'm going to regret it. So I'll take this one. I'm going to take every other one, because that's the easiest way for me to detach them, but not have to attach them one at a time. So if I take this one and this one and this one and this one and detach them, these three will be separate from these three, and these three aren't touched, or four aren't touching, so it doesn't matter. If I do like this one and this one to detach it, it's only going to detach these two from that one. So if you think about every other when you're detaching, that's a really fast way to break polygons off of other objects and keep them separate. So I'm going to come up here and say detach. It's going to give me the question, do I want it as a separate object? I'm just going to say element, and we'll see if I regret it, and say OK. Alright, so now if I looked at these and I grabbed one, it would be separate object. If I hadn't done that, before I did that when I pulled them, no, before I did it, there, when I pulled them, it took them with them. So we don't want that, we want the previous and first. So this last one, detach as element, and it'll also keep where you were. So now I have these separate pieces. So now I'm going to come through and do just this one. Again, I'm going to turn the F2 off. And I'm going to look at this one, and it's probably cut in half. So I'll go to 2, grab this, do that, cut it in half. These are where it gets a little tricky, right? What I'm thinking about is if I cut this edge to this edge, there's a chance I'm going to grab this element. So what I can do is not have to worry about that. I can just do this and then go Alt-R, right? And it goes only there. And how do I know? Because that's not attached to this one, so it won't go through a broken element. It just goes through the one element you're in. And then I can try and do stuff like connect and then do 2, because I see 1, 2, and maybe 3. 3 is going to be a little bit more of a dance. And I can just pull them out a little bit. Or I could just do it like with the Swift loop and just cut, 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 and cut. Okay. So, yes, I have extra polygons where I don't need them, but that's fine. We can get rid of those. It's easy enough. Once this piece is a separate piece, it's easy to get rid of that edge. So, again, we're going to go back to detaching. And what we're going to do is detach this one and this one. And then if I do this one, it probably is going to leave these two verts connected, so I can't do those. or even if I was that one, it's actually not even that one anyway. So I'll just attach, let's leave this element, and then I'll grab this one and attach it. And what you can do is go to element mode and you can see what's grabbing. There you go, these are still all attached. So this one and this one detach, and then this one and this one detach. I can go element. Yeah. So they're all separate. So in this case, I'm going to pull, actually, unless they need to be separate, I think I can just pull them all because they're already separate objects. So all I need to do now is shift and drag them out. Because now I've got, if I go back to element, I've got this whole thing as an element. So it's a separate brick with all the edges and everything. One thing you have to understand about 3D, about high-res stuff, which is what we're prepping for, is we don't need unwrapping. Don't worry about the unwrap. High-res is not for unwrapping. High-res is for stuff, is for just making the high version. So I'm going to grab this one right here, and there's another trick you can do. You can say by angle. That way when I grab it, it always grabs that whole even though it's cut by 2. And then I'm just going to move them around just a little bit, just to give me a little bit of flavor. Maybe pull this one out a little bit. Not much, just something to break the space up a little bit. Something like that. If I turn my wireframes off, I'll just do it the old-fashioned way. Display edge faces. Okay. You can start to see that they're breaking out a little bit. It's not a big deal. It's just enough. The cool thing about the mapping is it tells you, you know, you can see it visually right away. So, and if we turned off the mapping, you'd start to see the breakout. So I've got one done. That's it. That's all we're looking to do with that one. We'll come back and decide if we're going to divide them before we bring them in ZBrush, but that's pretty much it. This one isn't even, so I'm just going to go ahead and use Swift Loop on this one. Just go straight across to there. I'll go to there on this one, there on this one, and there on this one, and then we'll come back to element, but poly mode, and turn off my angle, snap, do this one, and I know this one doesn't touch, so I can do that, and just attach. I wish the attach was in my left-hand menu. I gotta make a shortcut for that. Actually, I guess I don't, because the new shortcut system's pretty good. Alright, detach this one from that one, and then I think all I have to do is attach this one from that one. And if I move this out, and if I go back to 5 for element, yeah, they're all separate. Okay, same thing. I'm going to come here, look at this one, go like this. Oops, I'll do it this way. This. And shift drag it out. And I can keep it the same height or whatever. This way, at least you know they're different. Really easy when you have no textures on them. Okay, on to the next one. So this one is interesting. We've got this curve, so we got to figure that part out. And then we have these other smaller curves too. So, you know, it's funny because this is not part of it. When you see this, that's the stretch texture. Do y'all know why this looks like this? Yep, it's everything in texturing has got to be flattened out. So when you pull this pixel out, it's stretching this last pixel infinite. So I mean, when we unwrap it, it fixes it, but we don't need to unwrap these. So just so you understand what you're seeing there, that's just that last pixel. That's why this is white and this is gray and this is darker, because it's just the last pixel that happened to be dragged, and there it is. So yeah, if you see this, that's just that last pixel that it grabbed and it went through there. So for this one, you know, there's a few ways to do it that I do curves. So I'm going to look at it from this side, and I'm going to cut it in half. First, I'm going to give the easy cuts where I can see that it's a separate piece. I'll do the vertical ones in a minute. Because these all bend in the same way, I'm not worried about the vertical ones until I start worrying about breaking them apart. So I'm going to go back to edge mode. Doesn't really matter. By the way, that's the great thing about Swift Loop is it doesn't matter which mode you're in. You can be in poly mode. You could be not even in a sub-object mode and cut. Turn on Swift Loop, and then I'm going to go one there. And then what I might do is put one right in the middle real quick just because it can. And that way I can cut easier without having to fight with the edge. Right there. And then I'm going to cut one right there. Okay, so you can see that I'm off. And I'm not worried. If your picture isn't perfect, you still know what you're trying to do. You know, if one writes, the thing is, if it's right here, it's right here, even if the picture isn't. So just remember, the picture is just the example, not the perfection. Okay, so there's a couple ways you can do this. The easiest way, the way I like to do it, is I cut it right down the middle, and then I'll cut it right down the middle again, and I probably could just do it with an edge loop or with a connect. And I'll go right down the middle on this one. And then I'm going to grab this one, that one, all the middle edges, and pull them out. Because what it does is it makes this, up and down zigzaggy thing. So I've got that. Let me go back to my material real quick. If you do put a new material on it, make sure you turn the roughness up to 1. Otherwise, you get shiny. With it down to 0 or anywhere, anytime there's a rounded edge, you're going to get this shiny. It's not going to do it now because I'm talking about it, but you'll get a shiny edge. So if you put this up to 1, it's just flat. That's why. There. Okay, so I've kind of got it, but it's still obviously jaggy instead of circular. Well, I probably want to bring this one out again a little bit further, and maybe these are a little too far out. It's up to you if you decide to use this one, how far you want them to be. Chamfer. Yep, chamfer, magic. Chamfer. Now, they changed chamfer, so I like to go back to tries. Even though it doesn't make it tries, it just doesn't, it does what I'm expecting. You can try the other ones if you want. But there you go. Now I'm pulling it in, and you can start to see that it's rounding it like this one. This one's better than this one. And we can also add more subdivisions, which will give us a little bit more to breathe with. And we'll go 2 maybe. And then we'll see if we can do it that way. Probably what we want to do is I'm going to deselect this middle one and just worry about these rounded ones here. And I'm going to pull these up and try and get them nice and round, just to get a good start for where I think they should be. And I probably need to redivide these separate anyway, but yeah. So now I've got those pretty good. They may not be perfect. If I want to, I can, now that you'll see that these 2 outer ones are selected, I can actually just go to transform and change it to 1 and see. Well, I'll probably have to do them each individually. Come think of it. Hey, stop it. Stupid lock. I probably can just pull this out so it's got a little bit more, or I can, keep playing with it and model it. Don't forget that just because I'm showing you shortcuts doesn't mean there's not going to be any modeling. There's always some modeling to make it a little bit better. That's where the art comes in. So I'll just pull this out a little bit. Those are pretty good. And then this one, I might leave that one more sharp like that just for the feel. And then I'll come back to this one and do that same thing, chamfer, but now I don't want it to be so short. I want to pull it out, because the farther I pull it out, the more it'll smooth towards that final position, this position. So if I turn this up, you'll see this is pretty good, but I'm not sure if I like, and if we look at this, I think this one, if you look at my drawing, was planned on being further out, but I've already got it kind of bending. How do I fix that problem? The cool thing is what we're seeing by default is actually still only grabbing one edge. So if I want to make this thicker, I can just keep pulling it out, make it wider, I should say, or deeper, and then pull it back in and pull it out. You can go really far, pull it back in, and you'll see it finds a medium. You can get this just the way you like it. You don't have to worry about going back and fiddling with it. That's my goal for life, is to take much of the fiddling out as possible, so I can play games or something. It's probably still too much, then you pull back and maybe turn this down. Sometimes it's easier to get that first position. Just the more subdivisions you have, the further it pulls it back. So pull this back a little bit like that. I think that was pretty good area amount. And then I'll just divide it, and I got something like that. And I can always, like I did with the other ones, come back here if I want this to have a sharper curve at the bottoms. I can just scale them up just a little bit, and then these 2, scale them up. Oops. Scale them up. So I've got a nice curved surface right there. So those 2 are done, sort of. Now I got to deal with the subdivision. So if I look at this one, it might be easier. In fact, it would be easier to break off all four of the hump areas. So I probably should have done that before, but I didn't because I'm not so smart. So I just do that. And also, I don't mind making mistakes because you can see that most of the mistakes I make are just not a big deal. And there's so many times you're going to be asked to redo stuff that it's just like a mistake. It's just not your mistake that you're fixing. And then we'll take those two and I'll just attach them. Okay. And then, now this should be its own. This should be its own. And this one and this one. They're all their own. And there's a reason I'm doing that. Because I do want this one subdivided through here, but I don't want these. I want these also subdivided after that too. And in all honesty, I may not even need to do that. I could have left this just by hand, just, you know, do these inside of ZBrush, but whatever, we're here, so let's do it. So I'm going to take, where am I on that? I'll take this one, and I should be able to see what I get for connect. Flip it off, so in theory, I should be able to say plus, then I can come over to this side and see if it fits, and it doesn't. But now I have the whole pieces here, so it's just, let's see, 2, turn this to 0, and see, yeah, they actually work pretty evenly. It's just this one's a little off, which worries me, but it's, again, perfection is while we're here. Okay, so say okay, and then I could just come up to this one, and what I might do in this one is, since I'm not going to put the subdivisions on the one above it, I'm just do it here, I might just Control Alt or Control Backspace to get rid of it. That way I can grab all of these edges here like that, the whole thing at once, and maybe I can get lucky enough to get myself happy with the subdivisions I do this way. Let's see. And we know it's even, we know they cut correctly, so sure. We're going to say yes. And then this one, Control Backspace, and then grab this one, Alt R to grab the whole ring, and then do connect again and see if this one's a little bit smaller, I think. I think they're bigger, I mean. So move them, yeah, they're a little bit bigger, so it gives us some break in the feel. So there you go. Alright, so I've edited the previous video a little bit, and this is what I'm going to show you an easy way to get these extrusions to be right, because you want them to be capped and everything first. I'm going to go ahead and hide the material so you don't have to fight with that. We already have it all cut up and everything in this one. We're going to get back to the material when we use it in the later. But I'm going to show you how to get these all capped off, because they should all be capped off like these pieces. And yes, they're all separate, but don't worry about that part of this right now. Let's just look at this. The easy way to cap this, and then I'll also show you how we can subdivide this up. So, easy way. These are all separate pieces, right? So we got this, and this, and this, and this, and this. I'm going to get a Q so I don't grab anything by accident. And these are all separate. They all have those subdivisions in them, and then this is separate. So what I need to do is cap it off like this, right? Have it at least filled out, and then we're going to end up capping them. So I'm going to show you how to do that in here really fast and easy, or at least more easily than I did before. So I'm going to go to this element mode, or I guess it's not element, it's border mode. I always call it the kidney bean, but border mode, and then I'm going to grab all of these. I'm just grabbing these pieces right here, and what I'll do real quick is I'm going to isolate this so we can just see what I'm working on in here. You won't be able to do this until you separate them, but it's just for the sake of showing you. So I'm going to grab all of these, and you can see that I have all these separate pieces grabbed, including these edges. And what a border does, if I click up here, you'll see it goes through anything that's open edge. So as long as you have an open edge, it will do it for us, and that helps us in a lot of ways. So what I'll do is I'll hold Shift, and I'll go to the Move tool, and I'll Shift and drag it out. And what it did is it put not only one, and then real quick, what we'll do is we'll do that same thing. Our thing that I like to do is use this, and I'll just flatten it. So you can see it's the Y direction, and it flattened it. And if it's not where I want it to be, I can drag it back or wherever I need it to be. Okay, but what it did real quick before we go further is it took each one of these now has an extrusion. So when we start sculpting on them, super easy to deal with. So I'm going to come back to this. This is my border selection. I can't do the next step to each to all of them together, but I can do them individually. So I'm going to grab one of these border sections, which is this brick right here, right? So it goes out, so it's all sides closed. And I'm going to do something simple. I'm going to hold Control and click on Edge Mode because that hides, that actually transfers whatever I've selected in one mode to the other. So I can do this, oops, and then I'm going to push Alt and deselect everything but those two sides. And then I'm going to push this button, Bridge. Now, I'm not crazy about the way it did this bridge right here, but honestly, I can fix it or I can just move on with my life, and that's what we're going to do. So I just need to go back to Bridge 3 and grab one. And you'll see it grabs this one, totally fine, don't worry about it. Go back to Control, select that. Keep pushing the wrong button. Control and then Alt and select these top edges. We'll get rid of that selection. And then we just do Bridge, and it did it beautifully. And then I'll go back to 3, grab this one, and go to Control, select the Edge Mode, go to Alt, deselect those top edges, and say Bridge. And then I'll go to 3, grab this Edge Mode, go to Control, change it to the Edge Mode instead of the border mode, and looks like I screwed it up on that. So let's do this again. We'll go back to border mode. I'm going to grab this one just so I make sure I grab the right one. Go Control, Edge Mode, deselect with the Alt button. I'm holding Control when I'm doing it, and then I'm going to push Bridge again. And it did that diagonal one. Now I still have this weird one here. How do I fix that problem? The cool thing about Edge Mode is it's only going to grab open edges. So I can just do a whole box around here and it's not going to grab anything but the empty one. And then I do that same thing. I go Control, Edge Mode. Hopefully I didn't screw it up. Alt, deselect. And I think I did. So let me go back to Edge Mode. There it is. Control, Alt, deselect, and then Bridge. And now I've got those closed off. So I got those super close off. And these up here real quick, I'm going to go 3, grab this one, and we can probably do these all at the same time at this point. So we'll go Shift, or go to Move Tool, Shift and drag, do the Y thing again. Probably want them even with the back plane. The top plane doesn't matter, but the back plane you kind of want to keep even. And then you're doing the same thing, really. You're going to grab this, and you could do cap, like some people are, why I don't use cap, but ZBrush does not like N-gons. And we'll talk about N-gons in a little bit in class if you have questions, but in general, it means anything that's above a 4-sided polygon. So if you cap this, technically it's a 4-sided, it's like a million or a ton-sided polygon. So I'm going to go to Edge Mode again, and this time I have to do a bigger selection. I wonder... So this one's a little bit more tricky because I've subdivided it already. I probably should have not subdivided it. So here's how you get rid of it if you do. I'll just go to Edge Mode, click on this edge. Alt L is the length, right? So it goes all the way to the length. So it's all the way around it. And then Alt R is the loop mode, which is this. I'm sorry, that's looped. This is ring. L is looped and R is ring. And then I don't want any of these actually selected, which sucks that it did that. So I'm going to Alt and deselect these edges here. So I'm just grabbing that. In fact, I don't know what this one either. So I'm Alt and deselect that edge, and I'm going to Alt and deselect that edge and make sure I have nothing but those edges that I don't want. I can cut them in a minute. And then I'll say Control and backspace, and it gets rid of them for me. Now, since these are all set up and there's no extra edges to divide them between, I can just do Bridge again, or I can go back to Control, Selection, Alt, deselect, and then I can do Bridge, and it's did it fine for me. Okay, so how do I get those cuts back? Well, same way I did before, really, just Alt R, so ring, and you'll see it goes all the way around, and then we'll just do Connect, and I think this was higher, something like that. Bam. Now, when I have that, and then you would do the same thing here. So this one's an easy one, right? Grab this one, go to Control, deselect, grab it. And I guess I did have an extra edge right there, which is kind of a pain, but here, I'll show what you can do. We can go, that's fine. So we'll go Bridge, and then you'll see it doesn't have that. So if we say bridge, we can try one thing and see if we subdivide it one time, it's right there. So it's still not lined up, but now at least if we double click it, we can grab that and just move it over to here, just like that. If I did a snap, I can snap it onto that. And I'll just grab these two rows here and collapse them. Oops, there you go. Which is the collapse button. I have a shortcut for it. And collapse them. So there. Now there's no n-gons. And then there's this one, which we had the same problems before. But so you're going to get rid of them, do your bridge back, and then put them back in. But why do I, what was I thinking about, do I want to divide these? No, I don't. So what I'm going to do is Alt-R, grab them all again, go to the side mode, L, and then deselect everything out of there. And then, of course, deselect this edge and this edge. There's a really cool thing you can do with edges, and a lot of people don't know, is you can right-click and say extrude. And if you extrude an edge, you know, it goes outward. But if we pull it back in, it goes inward. So then we can take this and shrink up how far out we're going to put that edge. And now we've got these bricks. We've got these cuts in them that are a little bit more. And if we missed one, we can just grab that edge. Looks like we did. Like this. And we deselected it. I'm going to do this a few times here. Oops. I'll come back over here and miss these. And really, this should be enough to get us something to carve into ZBrush. I mean, technically, you could just break it out and have a separate one for each of them, like we did with the one below. But this may be enough to get some edge deterioration and everything we may want with the actual geometry. And let's see, did I do it up top? Alt-X, if you don't know, is a shortcut for that. Yes, of course it did. And we'll go to hindsight's 2020, right? So, whether you want to keep doing this, it's fine. I'm kind of going to just do that and see what we get on the back side here. It actually divided the brick all the way around, which is not horrible. It did do some stuff over here, which we don't want. So we'll deselect all this. And deselect all this. And interesting. You know, it's always something. This would be much easier. Actually, I guess I can just go left, look at it from the left, and just deselect all these edges here. Not sure what it's doing up there, so we'll just get rid of it. And there we go. It's still doing something weird over here, but we can figure that out in a second. Let's make sure there's nothing. Okay, so now I've got this nice divided edge that if I want to pull it back now, I can, and then say okay. So that's a way to get that edge without fighting with it. And it looks like it's messed up here too. It's always something, by the way. And extrude. We'll just leave it default. And doing it fast for a class, you have to do some speed, and then you come up with errors and stuff. So, okay, done. That's it. And then we'll do the rest, and we'll go forward with that. Then I'll come up to this one. This one doesn't have a break, and that's okay. All we have to do is make sure it's a separate piece. It is. We're good. We'll come up to this one. And what I would do, even though this doesn't have a separate break, actually come back to this one. I need to do a couple things on this one before I move on. I need to give it the border and the border. I don't care about this. I just want these two borders because they're straight set up. So again, it used to be, they used to have a shortcut for this, but I think they changed it. So I'll just click on it, go to Swift Loop, grab that one, and grab that one. And again, Swift Loop and grab the middle. And this is pretty much all of your homework, by the way. You aren't going into ZBrush this weekend. Take the time and do it right. Take this. Now, here's the thing. Okay, so if I pull this out, you know what? It depends on if I want to make that rounded or straight. If I want to make it straight, meaning that they're just like cubes with rounded edges, when I extrude them, I could just do a simple, I'd use bevel, and that bevel goes obviously too much. So what I usually do with bevel, I love the bevel tools, I say 0, I pull it back as far as I need it to go, like let's say that much, just to give me a border, and then I say plus, because it adds another bevel. I change this to 0, and then I pull this one in, and then lift it up, and you get a built-in chamfer for what you're looking at there. And I can, you know, divide it however many times I need to get to that chamfer. There we go. So that works. And then this I would leave alone. I would not necessarily, I probably would break this face off. Okay, so, you know, and you can always come back in and divide this if you really wanted it to be rounded. We could have done it the other way, but we'll leave it that way. Now I'll come up to this one, and this one's a little blurrier, but what I drew it does is it slopes out, bevels back in, and then kind of has a diagonal to this point. So I probably just need to figure out where I want the cuts first. And this one will be a little bit more work, but since it's a separate piece, it's not too bad. Back to Swift Loop, grab that edge, do the bevel, the middle of the interior one, and then the outside edge here. Again, I'm ignoring the actual sculpty stuff inside of here because the goal is you build one and duplicate it. That's so much easier than trying to do a stamp or any of that stuff. Double click on it. Oops. Oh, I'm on that way. Double click, and then we'll probably, I don't see these two as the same distance, but I usually start together, and then I'll drop this one and pull this out a little bit more. And maybe even a little bit more from both. Okay. And then I take this one, and I do my chamfer. And it's too much, obviously. And maybe I could do them separate real quick. Just remember, I try to do them together because this one is going to end there. So if you're going to do one that's going to meet up with another one and you want to do them separate, which is totally fine, just make sure that however much room there is here is how much room you want to leave here. So if I pull this up, I know I can't go any further, and that one already compromises right there, so I can pull back on that. So I'm just going to kind of leave it. Basically, wherever the chamfer stops, it goes straight. So from there to there, it's not straight, but that's not a big deal because I'm going to round this edge. So I'll say plus, and then I'll grab this one, and then obviously it goes less, and there I get that kind of thing. And actually, I'm going to back up. Yeah, and I'm going to pull this one back. I want it, oops, one more. Pull this one back because I want it deeper. I want it to have more of a dramatic swoop up and out. So then I'll say plus, and then I'll come back to this one, and then pull it back. So I got, you know, a nice pushing out and then swooping in. If you want to divide that one, you can too. I'm not super worried about everything being divided. You can do these under pieces divided easier. You know, these are going to be separate pieces, so you can even do it inside of ZBrush if you had to. Or if you need to re-import it, since these are going to be separate, it's not a big deal if you want to change something on this and re-import it into ZBrush. Okay, so now we're on to this one. Hello. And this one goes out, and that's the big thing. You have to know if out is right or left, so out, and then back in, and then flat. So pretty much the same stuff. We're doing the same thing over and over again. I would do a Swift Loop. I would cut it here. I will cut it here. And then probably I'll do it here because I want that hard edge to stop. But then I'm going to take this edge, get out of there, back to 2. This edge, that's one of the things I'm not used to about Swift Loop is I can be in anything. So usually when I'm cutting in edge mode. But I'll pull this back a little bit. I'll pull this forward a little bit. And then we will take these two and do chamfer. Turn down the amount. Okay, so I've got that. That one's good. Now this one, I did it so it's more flat. It's got a little bit of a curve, then it goes straight, and then it's curved. So again, it's just about cutting up and getting it the way you want. So swift loop, probably there, probably in the middle of the bend, and then probably here to protect it, and then there and there. So I got to think this one through. These two should go out because they'll be going outward. This one and this one need to stay the same wherever they go because it's a flat area. This one probably goes in like that. And then I may not even round this one. I think I'm going to keep that one straight and just do a round on the bottom one to make our lives a little easier. Pull that out, maybe a little bit less. Doesn't need to be much because we are going to subdivide it. Pull it up a little bit. Oh, there we go. And bam. Okay. So all these pieces are now subdivided into themselves. And again, if I cut them up, it'd be better. But here's some other things we need to do before we go forward. We need to build these pieces and that piece. So that's not too bad for these, especially because basically we go to the front view, we go out of the sub-object mode, we go to box, and we make a box. And then we come back into here, and we subdivide it, none real quick. Just, we can always add more. And then we pull it back, and really what we're seeing here is these go pretty close to the same, and maybe it's easier in the Photoshop. In my head, these are a little bit shy of how far that one is. So I need to make sure either I make this the same height as this one, or I need to pull this out if I decide this needs to be longer. So I'll move this back into here, and then I'll pull this height back. Let's see if I get enough information. So I'm probably, I want to keep this, and I'm going to talk about this in a second, but I want to keep this a little bit more out so we get some more depth to it. And then I'm going to, so in this case, I'm going to take, oh my gosh, every time I have to figure out how to turn that crap off by default. Pull this out. Oh, I think I know. Actually, I just remembered. So if you want to get rid of the bounding box, which is an extra box so you know where everything is, and it's great for animation, but it's not very good for us, so you go to Preview, Preferences, you turn off Selection Bracket. Max did a bunch of keystroke changes for us this round because they're so awesome. Okay, so this now, we can get rid of the back and stuff, we'll deal with that, but this right here needs to be from the front. I want to make anything that's going to be 3D. I'm going to just go ahead, I assume to drag it down to poly at this point, push Alt-X so I can see through it. Anything that I do in 3D, I want that's a straight-on shot like these are, I want them to have a bevel. Because normals don't read straight on, full-on, straight-on geometry. So like if it goes deeper in or pushes out and it's not beveling as it goes in or out, it's just going to look like a flatness to the engine. So what I do is I'll pull this up to here first maybe, get this really defined correctly, make sure that it's inside of there where I want it to be, and then I'll take that bottom stuff, and maybe I'll just do the bottom here and pull it out to where I think it should be. So back to front, see, okay, and then I'll go to the side, do the same thing, out this way, and then this side, out this way, back to front, and there you go. Sure. Works great. It's dandy. Okay, so I've got that one. Now all I have to do is shift, drag a copy. Actually, it looks like it's, I'm going to make it a little bit wider. And maybe where I symmetry did, or, and it's not so clean. Maybe go to front. Okay. Now it's just duplicating it. And here's a trick that you may or may not know. If I move this all the way over here, and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. And I move this over to here, and it comes up with this option. I can type in 22 and say go. And it'll move each of those over. Now, in theory, it should have been better, but it sucks because it's probably because of my piece, not because of anything else. So in this case, I just got to figure where it starts going astray. And actually, this may be better. It may be better to leave it this way and just change it to 23. That way, they're all even. So if I come back to here, oops, shift to drag a copy of it and say 23. No, that one's almost. Okay. So this one I am going to make shorter so it fits better. And then we'll try it again. Shift and drag probably to there. And then 23. Wow. It's so drastic of a difference. Okay. Shift and drag this one almost to there, but not quite. 23. And now it's 24. As you can see, this is the fun stuff, right? So we'll do 25 and see what we get. So if we have to delete one, we can. And now we delete two. Actually, that worked out perfect there. So 23 worked when I moved it just right. Now, I know it doesn't match the under thing, but now we know these are perfectly divided between themselves, that they are correct. Even if it doesn't match the picture that we hacked together, we know the important part is not the picture, the important part is the geometry. In fact, do this. That's the other thing you can do is grab it all, Alt X again, it goes back. Okay. So the other last thing is that on this one, it's got this one piece that goes through it. I'm a big fan of doing something like this. Duplicating it. Actually, I'm just saying one. Moving it over to here. Go in invert mode. Pulling this up like this. And then taking it and pulling it down like that. And then again, taking this side here and doing this all the way over. Bam. And then we know this is not X, but if it was working correctly, X would make this, well, actually might work because it's a new piece. Yeah, so X does work. So we'll take this one and we'll go X. Okay, so I've got those. Just need to do the same thing for these. And you are welcome to interpret what those are. For me, they're just oblong spheres. So again, front D, come in here, go to control right. I'm trying to get used to my other shortcuts. Sphere. Out like that. A couple things you can do with this. Go to squash 0.5, so it only uses half of it. But so you know when it uses half of it, it also uses the same amount of subdivisions. So if I go to 10, that's probably better. And then eventually I'll delete the back, but then I'm going to scale it. Let me do the Alt X on this a little bit more here. Scale it, and again, I have a really crappy image, so looks like it's all the way in. Probably want to make sure it goes all the way in, so in this case I'll actually do it this way. And then collapse it over poly, since this way we don't have to do it. Easy way to get rid of the back face of a sphere or a cylinder is just delete the center edge. And there. And then we do the same thing. And in this case, we can just do, and you can do an array too, but this is just a quick array. There's an array option inside of tools. So let's try 30. Bam. what we're looking for is this edge difference here to be about the same as that one. So I'm going to do it a little bit smaller to there, and then say 30 again. I don't mind going over, it's easy to delete. And now it's too little, so I can never make my happy medium. So that was perfect, so we'll do this one. 33, fine. Still not matching. Okay. Well, actually, I forgot. I meant to check. If I do this and shift and drag, shift control drag, yeah, it doesn't do the number thing, which I love. Okay. So I'm in here to tools and array. I just love that copy. You can just type it in, and then you have to say preview, and then you have to say, in this case, in the x-axis, I want it to do this is move, this is rotate, this is scale. So if I do this, you'll see that it does that. And then I have only set to 10. You want to make sure you say copy, by the way, and then say 33. Let's see what we get. And then we can come back to here and pull them in until we get to where we like. I'm going to say 0.25. Nope, that was too much. 0.15. Still, so 1.1. That looks pretty good. Okay, so front, grab everything, Alt X, excellent. Turn that off. Oops, stupid. I gotta change shortcuts and Camtasia. Do this. Okay. So now, if we turn off the silly textures here, so on him, all I'm going to do is turn them off for now, like this, and then come back out, and we can see that I've got all the wool parts separated out. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is get these edges all extruded out, and then I want to have you do one more thing. But before we do that, I want to show you something. If I put on my wireframe again, there's a few of them in here I've already cleaned up, but I want to show you. If I go to FR, we go to 5, it's like this one. You'll see this is divided. We want to get rid of any subdivisions that aren't actually part of the mesh or needed for the mesh. So we're going to go to 2, double click it so it's there, and just push Control and Backspace. And just make sure you get rid of anything that's not needed for the actual geometry changes. Like these are all set pieces and all that stuff. Okay, so again, all we're going to do is go to 4, or go to 3, grab this edge. It should be just that, and shift and drag it. And do a Y in our case. It could be depending on the direction and the Z X form. But we'll do that. Oh, it looks like that. And then we'll do that same thing. We'll hold Control, deselect, grab these 2 edges, and do a bridge. And the big thing is, it doesn't matter if it's like that, because the big thing should be that there's no there's no n-gons, and that's the only reason we're closing it up. So when we get into ZBrush, we don't have this fight. And then we'll go back to here, we'll grab this one, and we'll go Shift and Z, and then do that same thing with the Y, and then Control, and select the edges, oops, and oops, hello, deselect any horizontal ones, and then just do bridges, and hopefully that works. We're going to get some funky ones in here, but that's fine too. And then this one, really what we want for the edges on these are just these. We don't want to grab the backs of the spheres or whatever, so we'll shift and drag them. And then we'll do this Y thing, and then we do the deselect the center of the horizontal edges. Oops. First we go over to edit the edge, then we go to here, and then we say bridge. We should be good. And then we go to this one, 3, click, and then Control, Shift and drag it out. Do the Y, the X,
the Y thing. And then, and it could be X or Z. It depends on how it was made, and that's fine. It will reset it before we put it out anyway. And then we're going to go to Control, select Edges, deselect the center part, and then do that bridge. That way we've got this all set up. It's all separate pieces. And the last thing I need you to do, well, there's a couple little more things I need you to do. It looks like here, this one was really easy. You just grab all these edges. Since there's no center divide cuts, all you have to do is grab all those edges, and you can actually say cap, and it will just close them up for us because they'll still be separate. So if I check it, you can check your stuff to make sure it didn't do anything weird. Everything looks good. Okay, last thing I would have you do is separate these out into big chunks. So if we go back to material real quick and we grab this and we turn it back on and then we see it, I'm going to take all of these and just leave it on poly or editable mesh mode, and then we're going to say detach. We're going to say detach as an element or an object. We're going to say base bricks. This is something I didn't used to do, but then I realized like this, it ends up being faster in ZBrush for one big thing, but we'll get to that in the next week. And then we'll detach this and we'll say, because of that naming thing, okay, and then we'll come to this one. Let's see. We want this whole section. Now remember, I don't want these to be separated. This is all one section. It just makes your life super easy when you get to ZBrush because it'll you'll be able to put them in folder, and then you can break them out if you need to. So again, we're going to say detach. Let's say bevel, oops, round. Sure. And then we'll go to this one, which is just the easy select, and we'll say detach, and we'll say scroll for now. And then again, this one, and detach, and we'll say bevel, bevel, in out. And again, I'm just trying to, and now like these, I want to make sure I get all these suckers in here too. This is all about organization, and we'll call this bevel with circles, or I should call this spheres. And then this one's already done. We'll call this bevel, we'll call this P2 boxes. Just something so you understand what it is. This is not for the world, this is for you. And this one, I should change to spheres. And that's it.
Next, we'll go into importing this into ZBrush, and we'll see you next time.